Hey everyone, welcome to UVA Entertainment Club of Los Angeles's March speaking event. I'm Maggie Chopade. I am a Senior Associate Director for our UVA Clubs and Global Engagement. I have just a couple quick housekeeping items before we get started on this afternoon's program. While we welcome anyone who would like to show their videos, we do ask to please make sure that your audio is on mute, so that just silences any background noise like the cars and perhaps a cat's bell that you'll hear in the background of mine. Please keep in mind that we'll also be recording this event, and we will have a time for Q&A near the end of the program. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat right now or as we go through our program, or you can wait until that part of the portion of the event to raise your hand or put your question in the chat. So that's all I have. So thank you again for joining us. Without further ado, Justin Paxton, our 2010 Theater and Dance graduate and our president of our UVA ELA, will begin our evening by an introduction of our speakers. Justin.
Thanks, Maggie. Hi, everyone. As Maggie said, my name's Justin. I'm the president of the UVA Entertainment Club of Los Angeles. And today's event will last around an hour, with the beginning section being a moderated conversation. And then, as Maggie said, we'll go into a Q&A at the end. You can put any questions in the chat and we'll try and catch them. Or you can also use the raise hand feature once we get to the Q&A period. So we'll just do a brief introduction of today's speakers. I assume that all of you know how to read and have read their bios if you are here. So Kevin is an activist in the FreeBritney movement to end the conservatorship of Britney Spears and advocate probate court reform. Outside of his activism work, Kevin is a writer-director whose latest short film, JA9, Jaw 9, premiered at the Los Angeles International Short Film Festival. He won the Outfest Fusion 1-minute film competition in 2015 with his short, Genius. Elisa Franzinetti is a London-based freelance assistant producer that has been working in television since 2016. Though her main focus is retrospective documentary, she's worked on a variety of formats, including undercover reporting, a talent show, and even a reality dating show. She maintains a network of London-based production companies that she works with regularly, including 2020, Pulse Films, and Raw. Her credits include top UK broadcasters ITV and Channel 4, Netflix, and most recently CNN's Searching for Italy with Stanley Tucci, which I have not seen, but I'm very excited about. All right, so just to dive right in, I have a few fun questions to start us off. So one of my favorite icebreakers to ask everyone is, what was your favorite Bodo's location, the corner, Preston Avenue, or Emmett, and why?
Obviously the corner, because it was the easiest to walk to from my dorm whenever I needed to after a night of partying, definitely.
Kevin?
It was a tie between the corner and Emmett for me, but I'm gonna go with Emmett because I went there a lot more during my time because the corner one didn't open until my 4th year. So.
Oh, it's very hard for me to imagine a corner without a Bodo's Bagels, but Preston was always my go-to Bodo's Bagels. I think it was because it had the biggest amount of parking and I always liked to park and then go eat. And they had a nice little sunroom that in the morning, it felt like you were just like basking in sun with your delicious bagel sandwich.
I am thinking of Preston. Oh,
is it Preston you're thinking of? Okay, yeah. I think with Emmett is the OG, yeah. Okay. What is your favorite or current favorite movie or television show?
Oh my God, there's too many. There's probably too many.
You can also say whatever you've recently watched that you've loved during quarantine.
Does it have to be very serious?
Or no, not at all.
Selling Sunset.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
It's the one that I've watched the most. Favorite in terms of whether it's highbrow or not, definitely not, but it's the one that has been the most compelling for me in terms of relaxing. Watching something relaxing.
That's awesome. And it was just renewed for a season 2 as well.
I think season 4.
Oh, is it season 4? Oh, I just saw it was renewed again. Kevin, what about you?
I'm gonna go with Promising Young Women.
Oh yeah.
I just right up my alley in terms of just tonally. And I know it's not the first thing you think of when you think of activism, but since we are talking about activism today, I feel like that has a lot of themes that kind of tie in. It's very timely in terms of the issues that we're talking about in 2021.
Yeah, I have only heard incredible things about it, but it is also on my watch list. Okay, and kind of final icebreaker, which is probably going to be really hard because I couldn't answer it, so you'll notice I put a caveat in. What is your favorite Britney Spears song or era album if you can't pick a song?
I have an answer just because I've answered this a lot, but my favorite era is self-titled, Britney, her third album. I just love her collaboration with the Neptunes and her reinvention of herself at the time, and yeah, it's a super underrated album. You should check it out if you haven't, if you don't know it.
Liza, what about you?
This is probably a cliche, but toxic, because it's definitely, I don't know, I just remember it being such a ridiculous video, and I absolutely loved it when it came out. As it's been covered by rock bands, it's a really, like, musically speaking, it's a very good song. I don't care what people say, I love it. It's great.
I feel like that's definitely like one of her more timeless songs that has just like continued to make the rounds, and like that music video itself, I feel like it's constantly being brought up again in cultural events. I like at the Grammys, Megan Thee Stallion, her outfit was very reminiscent of the Britney Toxic video where she was laying there, and I was like, yay, I love this. So yeah, that's a good choice. I don't know that I have a favorite. I would maybe say the first album. I'm such a like purist that like that very first album is just so good to me.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that I'll ever forget listening to it as a little gay boy in Virginia. All right, so now that we know a little bit about you, we'll talk a little bit about your background, and then we can jump kind of more into the meaty conversation, if you don't mind. So where did both of you grow up?
I grew up in Northern Virginia, like so many people who went to UVA.
I didn't grow up in Northern Virginia. Although my accent would probably say otherwise, because my mom is Virginian. I grew up in Italy, and then I went to high school in Italy up until I was like 16, and went and finished up high school in the UK, and then went to UVA because I had a lot of family in Virginia, and I loved the way. I mean, I remember visiting UVA and being like, "This is beautiful. I need to go here." So, yeah.
That's awesome. Where in Italy?
Near Genoa.
Okay.
If you guys have seen The Wolf of Wall Street, but there's a town that's called Portofino, and I grew up kind of in that area.
It's a gorgeous place to grow up.
Very
yeah.
Definitely don't have any complaints about.
I studied Italian at UVA, and then I actually did a J term with the theater program. They did a J term for Commedia dell'arte, where we studied abroad for 2 weeks in Arezzo. And it turns out that it was the same program that Darren Criss was doing like a couple of years before me. So missed my opportunity, but had an amazing time. And it was right next to a vineyard. So I also remember most of my time there. Italy's lovely. Okay, so as someone who works in legal, like I have a degree in theater and dance, doesn't necessarily correlate, but I always love this question. So what was your major or your minor?
My major was comparative literature, and the reason why I chose it was mainly because I was into languages, and it was the only degree that let you kind of study multiple languages. And mine were French and Portuguese, but I did a lot of classes in the drama department at UVA. And I'm sort of randomly in like arts admin. But that was my major.
Kevin?
I majored in financial economics. I did not go into finance, but those were the classes that fit what I was that fit the major, that best, and didn't know what to do with my life. And that is a recurring theme in my story, as you might hear.
I still say that we're all still growing up and trying to figure out what we want to do, right? But also, I mean, it's got to be nice having a bit of a financial background when it comes to producing and knowing like how the money side of that works, because I think that's one thing, like as a producer, that until you get that hands-on experience, you don't really know what you're doing with when it comes to money. Okay. Eliza, was there a class or a professor in your complet or in your drama classes that was extremely influential on you?
I mean, definitely. I don't know if you took classes with him, but Doug Grissom, he was great. I did a whole year because I had like finished up my major pretty much, and I didn't need to take so many classes in my major. I took a year of playwriting with him, and like that playwriting is obviously different than producing and making documentaries, but I think it still helped a lot in terms of learning how to make it, like write a good story or build a good story and narrative and characters. And it was like the first time I started thinking about my career and like what I wanted to do.
So I have to know, like after graduation, how did you end up in London? And private investigation company, like were you doing secret spy research? Like what was going on here? Can you talk a little bit about how you wound up there?
So basically my last year in college, like I said, I had like almost finished my major. I had a lot of free time, so I started watching a lot of documentaries, particularly Louis Theroux. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's very popular in the UK. And I got it in my head that I needed to go to London. Now, obviously, it's very different for me. I can move to London because I have a British passport, and that was like one of the places where I could just like move and live and go after graduation. So that's kind of what I did. Also, I had a base here. I like have friends and family here, and I started working in TV as like an intern in a studio, and then I got my first gig just translating. Now the whole private investigation thing, that's like a separate chapter of my life here, because I was kind of, at the time, it was finding it hard to kind of get the ball rolling in terms of getting jobs. So I got like a quote unquote normal job at this firm, and they mainly do like due diligence and consulting for companies and like intelligence about business, not necessarily individuals or anything shady. But it certainly helped out in terms of like getting some really good journalistic and investigative skills. They were great. I just thought, because it wasn't really what I wanted to do, I just thought the skills that I needed, and all the skills that I gained, they were all transferable in television anyways. So it was a good stint, but it was brief.
I mean, it's definitely one of those things on a resume that someone's like, wait, what is, tell me more about your time doing this, right?
It was a lot of Googling, learning how to use Google really well. They do that, but yeah, like investigators are really, really good at that.
Maybe I would be a good PI then.
Honestly, internet, like amateur sleuths are as good as anyone, I can tell you that.
Okay, and Kevin, I know we have a video clip. Do you want to show that, see if it works first, and then I can kind of jump in and ask you a little bit of questions?
Yeah, I will share screen here.
There's a lot that people don't know about me that I want them to know.
Growing up, I struggled with anxiety and depression, and Britney Spears is the one who made it okay to struggle with those things.
She gave me permission to be myself growing up as a gay boy in suburban Virginia, and Britney gave me the power to be who I am.
You even shaved your hair off. Hey, I shaved my hair off too because I didn't want nobody touching me. And they still didn't get it.
Britney is in the midst of a legal battle right now. She's been in a conservatorship for the past 12 years.
FreeBritney!
There's been a lot of speculation as to whether this is in Britney's best interests, and is this good for her? Is this what she wants?
All right, so today we have a conservatorship hearing for Britney Spears. Currently, conservator of the estate is Jamie Spears. Boo!
Get me out! Get me out!
Her dad has been in charge of her money for the last 12 years. And a few months ago, Britney's lawyer said Britney wants someone else to be in charge of her money and wants Jamie, her father, to step down. Britney's father so far has refused to step down.
But this time it just feels different. I'm so excited. I feel really hopeful. Hey guys, it's Megan. The judge has not made any decisions yet, but we did want to give you a quick update. Britney has told Ingham on multiple occasions that she's scared of her father and that she refuses to work until he is no longer in control of her career.
Okay, wow. Okay, so how did you get from financial economics to what we just saw?
Good question. I'll take, you very briefly through I've been out of school for 15 years, so a lot's happened, in that time. But I graduated with a degree in financial economics. I did want to be a filmmaker. I've been wanted to be, writing and directing feature film since high school, really, but there's no film major at UVA. So, during my time at UVA, even though I studied finance, I took a lot of, film classes. The class that had a great impact on me was with Kevin Everson. So that was always, I guess you could say that was like my side hustle, during and after school. And so after I graduated from UVA, I moved to LA to be sort of adjacent to the entertainment industry. But the job I ended up getting right out of school, it was in the mortgage industry. And that was in 2006, 2007. So we remember what happened to the mortgage industry then. And so, so after that, the job that I happened to get was in healthcare, doing data analysis. And so that that is the job that I still hold today. So I just stayed at that company and continued, working in data analysis while, also trying to get a filmmaking career off the ground. And that's how I was able to, shoot, several shorts that I entered in the competitions you mentioned earlier. And then I sort of stumbled onto the Free Britney movement. So those of you who did watch Framing Britney Spears know that there was a moment, there was a voicemail that was released on a podcast in early 2019 that detailed what was going on with Britney Spears' conservatorship. And sort of, it was the moment that, a lot of Britney Spears fans, that clicked for a lot of Britney Spears fans, that, something was going on, that basically that her conservatorship was more restrictive than we previously thought. And that really what needed to happen was public outrage, was for people like fans and people, members of the public to, raise our voices, because otherwise nothing was going to change. At that point, it had already been going on for 11 years. And we realized we had kind of been misled by her team. So me personally, I've been a huge Britney Spears fan. You saw from that little clip, since my childhood, and always followed her career throughout. And so it was a big shock to me to hear that voicemail and to realize that I had been misled, all those years too, by her team. And so that's how I got involved in the Free Britney movement. There was a rally scheduled, right after that voicemail dropped in early 2019, and I didn't know anyone. I just, I made a sign, went by myself down to the courthouse and just stood with everyone else. And there was the group, it was maybe like 20 people there. And I just kept in touch with, everyone there. And we thought this was not, I think a lot of people kind of look at the movement now and think that maybe this was something that that I, or maybe a small group of people, decided to like make happen. But it was very organic. We thought it was just, something we showed up to the courthouse to do, and we thought conservatorship was going to end, then and there. When that didn't happen, that's why we stayed in touch and, kept organizing the next protest and the next protest. And we were also fighting against this narrative in the media that we were conspiracy theorists, that Britney Spears really needs a conservatorship, that maybe she's mentally unstable. And I'm sure if you've only been tangentially or only kind of kept up with it, like on the surface level, maybe that's what you think as well. But but we kept fighting against that. And so the point I'm trying to make is, it just kept growing and growing, the movement, until it sort of became very front and center in my life. And like I was spending all my free time, kind of making this movement happen. And as more and more, as it grew and grew, there was, it kind of went viral on TikTok over the summer. And then that's when a lot of media companies got interested and decided to make some projects about it. So the New York Times was one of multiple companies that were interested in it. And they happened to be the first ones to release a big project about Britney Spears' conservatorship and the movement. And so, and that caused a huge wave of attention as well. And we're super grateful for Samantha Stark, the director, and the New York Times for doing that, because now the way I like to put it is, like, before we were regarded as conspiracy theorists, and now we don't really, like, if you saw Framing Britney Spears, I don't have to explain to you what Free Britney is about. You understand what it is, and on top of that, why we care. I think that was the other piece of it that I thought was very impactful. So that's my journey in a nutshell. And I certainly didn't expect to have this be, at the forefront of my journey. But I think that I guess, I reached a point where I realized that I was just going to have to accept that this was a big part of my life, and I was grateful for it. And I believe that this movement really has the capacity to affect change, not just for Britney Spears, but for everyone else who's affected by conservatorship.
Yeah, that's quite a journey. And like, what a fascinating journey as well. Elisa, let's bring you into this conversation. So at what point did you become involved either in the movement or in the documentation of the movement, or interested in the movement, or where did you kind of learn about this?
Well, I was just doing some research on another documentary on a series that I was working on. One of the episodes, I had to do some research on, like, pop stars in the 2000s. Kind of actually echoing, I guess, they're just looking at how the media treated these women, essentially. And I got in touch with Kevin because I wanted to know more about the movement, and he very gracefully had a chat with me. And I mean, I got very, very interested in it. I also managed to see the documentary, and I mean, it was great because I genuinely, like Kevin was saying, I mean, I only knew about the movement peripherally. Like, I had seen a lot of memes, I had seen a lot of, like, a lot of, user generated footage, and a lot of TikToks that had sort of, talked about it, with people kind of detailing their own theories about what was happening. I mean, whether or not these people who were making these TikToks were actually part of the movement, I don't know. But that's the only, Instagram and Twitter were the only real places where I really knew about it before watching the documentary. So yeah, I mean, from the perspective of somebody that I would love to make a documentary about this, but I think what would be the most interesting, aside from obviously hearing Britney Spears's, perspective on all of this, which I doubt would happen anytime soon unless Oprah got involved, which I've heard that she might. I don't know. It'd be really interesting to learn more about the people in the movement and why. I'm always interested in learning about why people get so passionate about causes and sort of rally around causes like this. Obviously, it's obvious why this is a worthwhile cause, but in this moment, why is it that so many people are kind of waking up to this? And I mean, obviously, it's thanks to Kevin's work and everything, but I just find it. I love the New York Times documentary. It was great. I do think it would have been more interesting to learn a little bit more about, Kevin and the other people in the movement as well. That's the only thing I think lacked a little bit, I guess. Yeah, it was just missing their perspective. But obviously, it's kind of difficult to cram everything into an hour and a half.
Sure.
And I think a lot of the reason why it was so compelling was that it highlighted how badly Britney Spears was treated. And I don't think people have really reflected on that before this. And documentary is a really, really good way to do that, because I mean, obviously we can, you can only learn so much from social media. Documentaries really allow you to reflect on something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously, my opinion that Britney was essentially slut shamed and treated in a terribly sexist way. And I think, I've always felt that way, by a court, like that the media treated her this way, at least, I've always felt this way. I think many of our fans have always felt this way, but I definitely think that this documentary shows that this perspective is now kind of more widely accepted or more widely understood. So kind of directed at both of you, when do you think that societal shift of acknowledgement happened? Or do you think there was a specific turning point?
Specific to Britney or specific to the way we've been treating women generally?
I will let you take it either way you want.
Because I think that since Me Too, I mean, there have been so many, there are now so many documentaries and so many sort of pieces and human interest pieces are being made about the way that women are treated in the media. I mean, on the sort of extreme end, you could think of Surviving R. Kelly, that's a very extreme version of, but that I consider that to be an activist, a documentary series, an activist documentary series. So I think honestly, it's only been in the past 5 years that we've really been interrogating the way that we treat women in the media, whether that's in advertising, whether that's in films, whether that's in, documentaries. I mean, there's just, we've only really been questioning it maybe since Me Too, but maybe a bit before that, but probably properly since Me Too, I think. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think that Me Too played a huge role in terms of the societal shift, in terms of views toward women. But I do think framing Britney Spears specifically was that turning point for the general public perception of Britney Spears specifically. So even though I will agree with Elisa that the framing Britney Spears left out a lot, and those of us within the movement, you'll hear conversations about because the piece itself presents nothing new to anyone in the movement, and I think some people were hoping that it was this investigative piece that was going to blow the whole lid off and put a bunch of people in jail, and it didn't do that. It didn't set out to do that either. But I think what it did do a really good job of was bring the broader society who had been making fun of Britney Spears into the group of people who empathized with her by presenting a lot of things that a lot of us lived through, but maybe had forgotten. And just when they present all those paparazzi chases in your face, you're kind of like, yeah, I do remember living through this and seeing it in the news, but being presented with it in 2021 just makes you think about it differently. And I thought it did a really good job at that. And I think and I will say, I haven't talked about this that much, but with my background in filmmaking, I did, when the movement was in its infancy, way before like we had mainstream media companies paying attention, I had, several friends tell me that I should make a documentary about the Free Britney movement, just because I was in touch with, a lot of the other people in it.
Yeah.
And I did start going down that path before I was super involved in the movement myself. And here we are now. I would have lots of competition if I were to keep doing that. But I think what Framing Britney Spears, one of the advantages it had going for it was that the director, Samantha Stark, was not a Britney fan. And therefore she was able to come at it from the perspective of someone who was empathizing with Britney, but didn't necessarily know all the details that fans already knew and took for granted, if that makes sense.
That
so
does,
I think,
yeah.
So I think that's one of the ways it was successful.
Yeah.
Definitely successful in showing also how mean journalists were. I mean, I've never before seeing this I thought of Diane Sawyer as mean, but not generally speaking, not great, and also sexist. So
yeah, I mean that interview was just watching it back, like just
jaw dropping.
Yeah, it really was. It's just like we brought this young woman on television just to tear her down publicly in front of everyone. Like, it's just like, it's so clear, how wrong it was. And it's just astonishing that at the time, none of us, or it wasn't understood widely that that was not acceptable treatment of someone, right? Kind of continuing a little about the intersectionality of activism and film television. So that intersectionality of film as a medium, and when I say film, I do mean film and television, and activism is particularly of interest to me. When I interned for a dance company, they often did dance pieces that were inspired by climate change and politics and things like that. And it was always fascinating to me how the choreographer would use video in the dance pieces, but also how the piece would be filmed and edited, and it would become a totally different piece of work after it had been kind of performed. So Kevin, I'm kind of wondering, is that the same for you? Like you're there, you're living in the moment, but then you're also, being recorded, there's cameras around. So what's that like? And is it strange to kind of look back on that footage?
It is strange. I will say that we always knew that it would take something like a big film project or a TV project to really spread the message of the movement. And I know within the movement, there's some debate over, do we want to pander to the mainstream media? Do we let them tell our story? But I think overall, there was always the sense that we needed something like this. Were we excited that it was going to be this one? We actually didn't know until the day it was released, because we didn't. It wasn't. How do I put this? Like we were nervous about the angle they were going to take, just because we had been burned so many times by. There was just a Vanity Fair article released a few months before, who some of us spent hours on the phone with that writer. And the article she ended up writing compared the Free Britney movement to QAnon. And we were just, beside ourselves. And that was a bad experience, but it didn't stop us from. It just made us a lot more cautious about the journalists we were working with. And so even, looking back on Framing Britney Spears now, we're so grateful that had the impact that it did. But it certainly wasn't a foregone conclusion. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess I would just say, yes, like we always knew that it would take something like that, which is why I had the idea to do one myself, before these other companies took it on. and to go back to something Elisa said earlier about, you know, wishing that there was more about the supporters of the movement. I think that is an interesting take, and I think there's certainly room for a project like that. I will say the New York Times did shoot a lot more than they could fit in. Like they, you know, came to my house and, you know, got, you know, my boyfriend and my dogs and, you know, had us making breakfast and working out. Like it was sort of, but like when I tell you that, you're like, you know, that doesn't fit into the finished product at all. But there's definitely there was a version of this piece that had featured the protesters a lot more, and they ended up choosing because they weren't able to get people who were in Britney's circle, and as they got, you know, more closer to the people closer to Britney, they chose to feature them more.
Yeah, right.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that totally answers my question, right? Like you're being filmed by these mainstream media companies and things, but you have no idea if they're going to compare you to QAnon or tell you that you actually are legitimate, right? Like, and that footage, that same footage could have been used by Vanity Fair and the New York Times to argue either point, right? Like, it really does kind of speak to the political divide in this nation, right? But also like how scary it can be to put footage out there without the proper context of what's going on, right? Like if you just put a picture out there, like, yeah, it does look like a bunch of people just holding up bright pink signs like saying "Free Britney Spears," right? But like when you actually learn why they're fighting, and I think that's what I really enjoyed about the Framing Britney Spears, the documentary, is it really showed us like why her fans are stepping up and supporting, because she can't, for all, like, you know, she doesn't really, at least my opinion is that she doesn't really have the power to do so. So Elisa, to bring you into the same question, so from a producing perspective, what are you looking for when you're working on a project that's similar to this? Is there footage that's already there that you're hoping to grab, or are you going into the field and recording, or how do you go about that process?
I mean, it really depends. I think what I'm most interested in within the realm of producing is always getting to know, obviously, like producing in the UK means something maybe slightly different than in the US. So I don't have as much experience, or I don't have as much say in like the financial side of things. I'm purely editorial. So the thing that I enjoy doing is actually getting to know people and the reasons why they do things, and really kind of getting to the nitty gritty of like this story. So I will be, you know, as an assistant producer, for example, I'll be the one spending hours, kind of like the journalist from Vanity Fair did, maybe not to a great effect, but like hours and hours with somebody to kind of understand the what, the where, and the why of what you're doing. So from a production point of view, that's what we are looking for. And then obviously you'll kind of go through archive. I will have gone through, like, you know, the interviews with Diane Sawyer, or all of the different things that could possibly represent, you know, the way that Britney would have been mistreated. And then like in terms of learning more about the movement, yeah, it would have been good to see how the producers of that film got to know you guys, and like just learning, and because I think what I wanted to know the most, and what I would want to know the most of it, know more in like a future Britney doc, would definitely be reasons, because obviously she means a lot to a lot of people. She's also she's an artist. She's given amazing things to her fans, and still makes things, still makes music, with obviously differently now, but you know, she still gives a lot to her fans. So I do want to know more about why people have bounded around her specifically, as opposed to others, as opposed to like other causes. I think that it's valid, but it's not self-evident to absolutely everyone. And that to me is interesting. I
like that angle.
But then also the other thing that's very important for me within production is, I do think that as much as, you know, you're trying to make something sensationalistic that people are going to watch, but you do have a duty of care to the people that you're making documentaries about. Yeah. So the fact that, you know, they compared you to QAnon, I think maybe they should have told you that that was going to happen, or that they probably should have, because that does have repercussions on people. And, you know, if we're talking about Britney Spears and we're talking about reframing how the media treated her, that you can't really do that to people. And I do think that that is questionable. I haven't read the Vanity Fair article, so I don't know, but I definitely think it's wrong to, you know, sensationalize people unfairly without any grounds to do that. And I think that is changing a lot in production generally. Yeah.
All right, I want to give a chance for everyone to ask some questions as well, but one last question for you all. Do you have any upcoming projects or anything you'd like to plug?
I mean, definitely watch Stanley Tucci's Searching for Italy. I only did one episode, but it's
I'm watching for your name. I'm watching.
In the first episode, you'll see me. I'm in the crew. That was great.
Is that your TV premiere?
I think I'm actually. If you're looking for anything escapist, definitely watch that.
Awesome. Kevin, what about you?
If you want to get involved in the Free Britney movement, check out freebritney.army. That's our website. And I am, a team of us is, we're on Instagram and Twitter at FreeBritneyLA.
Awesome.
I see that you're doing a London march.
Yes, London. Oh yes, if you should definitely go.
I might go with the camera and check that out.
It's the first Free Britney rally in the UK.
Yeah, definitely worth I'm definitely gonna go down there for sure.
I love this. All right, we have one question in the chat to kick off the Q&A. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or raise your hand. So the first question is from Rodney. Rodney's wondering if Britney herself has had any contact with any of the movement supporters.
Short answer is no. And I think that just speaks to how controlled her environment is, how limited, you know, her contact with the outside world is. As public as the movement has been, we still don't have a clear indication of what Britney herself really wants. I mean, I can tell you just, you know, based on she has, you know, her court-appointed attorney has, you know, filed reports that say she welcomes the support of her fans, but we haven't seen an Instagram live of her saying that. Right. You know, or that she.
I mean, it's a bit strange that she hasn't responded either way, right? Like, I think that's very telling. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think that speaks to exactly why we want this conservatorship to end, so that she can make that call for herself.
Yeah. In the chat, we've got from Ellie, what is the latest update or what has changed since the documentary story, you know, ended?
So in terms of the case itself, not much has changed. And I think that's why we want everyone to know about it and keep speaking out about the way the probate court enables this kind of corruption. In terms of the movement, we've just gotten a humongous wave of support because of the documentary. And more people, you know about it and are getting involved. And I will say, bigger picture, a lot is happening. We actually, you know, Congress is talking about it. You know, it may be a Republican distraction tactic, but people are talking about conservatorship abuse, you know, at the federal level, and that's huge, and that is because of, you know, the movement and because of framing Britney Spears. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Are there any updates like within the movement? What are you all's kind of next steps? I mean, clearly you're, you know, expanding globally at the moment. But can you speak a little bit about like what the next steps are for, at least for like your involvement in the movement?
Yeah, so the goal has always been to end the conservatorship and to spread the message. So really whatever it takes to continue spreading that message, whether it's, you know, putting on more rallies, all around the world, continuing to collaborate with, other documentary projects. So all of that is happening. There is some work behind the scenes about whether or not we need to take more direct action, with the court. And so that is something we're working on as well.
And Elisa, have you seen, is there some sort of international recognition? Was it kind of known throughout the globe before the documentary, or did the documentary really kind of blow it out of the water?
I honestly don't think that before the documentary, I mean, globally, maybe there were some people on Instagram talking about it, but now I've seen I follow quite a lot of people, my friends from Brazil, and there's a lot of people talking about it in Brazil right now.
Brazil loves Britney Spears.
Brazil loves Britney.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do. I mean, in terms of there's a really big influencer that in Italy, she's quite famous. I think her name is Chiara Ferragni. She's got 30 million followers, and she talked a lot about the New York Times documentary in one of her posts. So I know that they must be talking about it in Italy right now. I think generally it's just, she was an international star, so it will obviously be of interest all over the place. And the fact that they're doing a rally in London, well, then that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if you're an international fan, at least I was lucky enough to go see her when she did her residency in Vegas, right? And she talked in interviews, at least, about how she really loved that because they gave her some stability in her life. But if you're international, not only has she refused to perform for a while, but if you were international, you haven't been able to see her in 10 years, 10, 15 years since she last probably toured. I don't even know when her last tour was, but
honestly, in Italy, from my childhood, I remember her coming to Italy and doing things in Italy, but I don't know the last. That would have been, early 2000s, late 90s. So I don't know when she would have last gone to Europe or been able to. I mean, I'm assuming her passport's not even. I mean, she doesn't even have a passport, right? So how would she
right
go across the world?
Yeah. Is she even allowed to leave the country without, her dad's permission? Yeah, that's crazy. From Lucy in the chat, we have, do you ever feel crazy or doubting yourself or doubted in yourself when people weren't listening to you at first and the media compared you to QAnon? And if not, what motivated you to stay committed to the Free Britney movement?
I mean, the bottom line is we always had the facts on our side. So if you just look at the court filings, this conservatorship really shouldn't have happened. Britney was denied her right to her own attorney. She was denied notice of a hearing. She was denied due process. All of those facts were true, since the very beginning. And the claims that were released on the voicemail, basically that she got in trouble for driving to In-N-Out, and that's why, her domination residency was canceled. And, there were a lot of those claims that turned out to be true, that her team couldn't deny. So there were a lot of facts. There were a lot of facts on our side. I think the one thing that made some of us kind of doubt whether we were doing the right thing is whether or not Britney herself welcomed it. Because we, couldn't, and I think there were enough clues that she did, and that's what kept us going. And when I say clues, I mean, just let's say she didn't let's say she really hated the Free Britney movement. Wouldn't you think her team would be clamoring to get that story out in the media? So that's a big clue. And then you would just hear things through you would just hear things.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point. Particularly if you're her team and you're being accused of controlling her, you would obviously want her to say this is not happening. But if you aren't getting that, then it makes you question what's really going on there, right? That's a pretty good point. I like that you said you always have the facts on your side. I feel like, Elisa, as a production person, that's probably super important to you too, right? To always know the story that you're telling is actually the truth.
I know, because I mean, oftentimes you want, especially as like a, the work that we do is kind of journalistic, and you always want stories to be something. So there's always a tendency to like, overinflate things, or not overinflate, or just look for things that you want to fit the narrative. The fact of the matter is you can't.
Right.
If, as Kevin says, if the court documents say what they say, then everybody can have an opinion. But if it's on paper, if it's in black and white, then there's only so much else that can be said to disprove that.
Right.
And now Britney's dad's lawyer is like on a press tour. If I don't know if anyone's been following, she's going on Good Morning America and CNN, and talking about, how wrong the Free Britney movement is. It's not typical for lawyers to go on a press tour about an ongoing case. So to me, that says that they realize that this is being tried in the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
And so it's almost validating to the movement to see that what the public believes matters in this case, which is unfortunate. It shouldn't be the case, but that is where we are. Is that what we think of Britney matters, and so that's what the movement's been sort of combating this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, you guys essentially went from a group of fans outside of a courthouse to an international army of people who are ready to defend her. I mean, it reminds me of like of a titan of any industry. They never think like there's a threat comes up and they're like, oh, it's just a group of fans with some signs. Like, we don't have to worry about them. And now the lawyer is doing a press tour to try and defend their client, right? So clearly the movement has become a threat. So in the last couple of minutes, being respectful of everyone's hour, is there anything you'd like to add about the movement? I'm particularly fascinated to hear, like, what is, how does it go beyond Britney, right? Like, I've heard people talk about like Amanda Bynes' conservatorship, and then there's the Netflix show I Really Care, which is also about conservatorship, and it seems like it's such a hot topic right now. So do you see the movement going beyond that? And Eliza, if you don't mind also like talking about, like, have you seen sort of this shift in like talking about political human issues in like production?
I mean, certainly right now, one of the big things that's being talked about is just like the nature of fame and how, the kind of abusive relationships that celebrities get themselves into. And I think one of the things is that I think a lot of people back in the 90s or back in the 2000s, they expected to treat their celebrity. We had famous people, and we were allowed to treat them any way we wanted because that's what they signed up for. Yeah. But I think that is really being put into question, and that's kind of what a lot of programs are looking at, like questioning that relationship between fans and celebrities and paparazzis and the whole ecosystem that's built around fame, and kind of just sort of questioning whether or not it's humane. Because at the end of the day, we can talk all we want about these famous rich people, but they are human beings, and nobody signs up for that level of abuse. Whether it's, and I doubt anybody signs up to a forced conservatorship. So, I think that's the big shift in terms of big themes that are being discussed in different programs that might be made or that are being made. I think that's like the crux of it. That's the sum of it.
Yeah, a big takeaway is that Britney Spears is not the only person in a corrupt, forced conservatorship. This is, the I Care a Lot is a great example, that what happens at the beginning of that movie is what happens to a lot of people. And until the Free Britney movement, those people were trying to be heard, and they weren't, because this was happening because people thought this was only happening to the elderly or to disabled people. And unfortunately, that is not sensationalized enough for it to gather, the public momentum that the Free Britney movement has. And so I think that is what I want, people to take away from this issue, is that that there is a problem in our probate court systems, that needs to change.
Yeah. All right, well, we are out of time. Thank you both so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. This has been a really wonderful conversation. I love this topic. I think there's definitely more to come on this topic. And Elisa, thank you for staying up really late for us. I know that it's late for you.
You guys have got, it's only 9 o'clock, so you guys.
She's like, it's still my morning. Don't worry. Awesome. And Kevin, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And, you know, if anyone has any questions, further questions for Kevin or Elisa, feel free to reach out to me at the uvaentertainmentla@gmail.com, and I can see if I can put you in touch with them. If you ever need anything at all, feel free to reach out to that email and we'll see if we can't help you out. So thank you again, Kevin. Thank you, Elisa. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Bye.